So can I just start off with a very quick head count? How many people have ever owned a Bitcoin? Right, okay. How many of you still own Bitcoin? How many have other kinds of digital cryptocurrencies? Right, okay. The level of knowledge is incredible. It's great to see it. Okay, so what we're going to do, today's session is literally about, the title is Blockchain, game-changing technology,
yes.
And that's where we're going to start. So the main conversations are going to be between, obviously, Eddie and Thomas. I'm going to ask questions, and we're going to have, subject to time, we'll have a few questions at the end. So can I start with you, Eddie?
Yes.
Why is blockchain a game-changing technology? Can you summarize that?
So as we all know, over the past decades, what was very important for us, what changed our society is the internet. And the internet initially started as the internet of information. So basically the new way of managing information, of recording data, has changed how we do everything almost on a daily basis. The first application of the internet was email, so it was quite simple to use. And nobody really worried how it works, but we know it works, we send email every day. And then of course, then we moved to e-commerce and the big impact it has on our lives and on societies and how it created multi-billion-dollar companies. Now, blockchain today is compared to the internet, but it's not the internet of information anymore. Blockchain is more about the internet of value, because initially, when you were starting to send emails, what you do when you send an email, you actually send a copy of a file which is on your hard drive, for example. Now, everybody knows that any file that you have on your hard drive, you can duplicate forever. That's why until now, or until Bitcoin was created, there was no way to have a digital asset or a digital cash, because it was so easy to replicate. So it would be possible to have a value on it, right? Now, with blockchain and Bitcoin was created the first actual working digital cash. So basically, anyone has email today, you can send Bitcoin or you can send cryptocurrencies to one another. You don't really need to know how it works or what is happening really, but you know that when you send Bitcoin, which has a certain value, it's going to reach your wallet or somebody else's wallet, and you know that this has a value and that no one else can double spend it. Nobody else can spend the same Bitcoin you just sent. So this is actually creating the framework for something we call today the Internet of Value. And blockchain was created to actually solve this problem. So what blockchain does is records all these transactions and stores all these transactions on thousands of computers around the world, which are called nodes, and which are replicating this data. And this database that it is basically creating every 10 minutes blocks is actually an open source, an open database that anyone can access, anyone can interact. Now, because this was open source since 2009, many people have copied it, many people have done clones. So you have hundreds of blockchains around the world for different purposes, and you have hundreds of cryptocurrencies. But blockchain as a technology, as the initial concept of storing data this way and recording these transactions, is actually changing the way many large institutions can do their business every day, such as, for example, we're talking about stock exchanges, we're talking about depository companies, we're talking about Internet of Things, we're talking about very large industries like healthcare, like insurance, that can use this technology to make sure that data has been recorded and cannot be changed. Because that's one of the features of blockchain. You cannot go back and change anything. Because if you try to do that, then you break that chain. So basically, blockchain is recording transaction or data every 10 minutes, for example, on the Bitcoin blockchain, but there are other blockchains, so at different intervals. And this data cannot be changed because it forms this chain of blocks, and you cannot go back and try to change this transaction.
Okay, so you have what's effectively an immutable record of every transaction, which is how blockchain works. We can't really talk about blockchain without talking about Bitcoin, although it was the introduction of Bitcoin which made people aware of the power of the technology. Things are moving on. I should mention that Coincilium as a company is traded on the Next Market. It was the first IPO in this space, and it has an investment in about 15 companies who are developing their own solutions in this whole ecosystem, and we're also operating. So it gives you a bit of context of why I'm here and why we're talking about it. But the next evolution we're seeing in this space is something you're going to hear a lot more about going forward, is called smart contracts. Smart contracts are just basically code that's programmed in, and I'm going to now ask Thomas to give you a specific example and also just an overview, top down. Where did smart contracts come from? What's the term? How are they going to be useful in the blockchain space going forward?
Sure. I think that the introduction that Eddie just made is very interesting because the main point here is that Bitcoin is digital cash or digital gold, if you want, because of the very properties of the blockchain, which are it being a trust machine. So The Economist last year defined it on the front page exactly in that way. So the trust machine, what does it mean? It means that you can, for the first time in history, do transaction among parties that do not trust each other once the rules you want to enforce are defined. So in practice, in Bitcoin, we use this consensus, this distributed consensus, to transfer value. So transferring value is something easy because the rules can be defined in advance. So for example, we can set the supply to be predefined, or we can set that a given account really holds a given balance. But smart contracts try to go a step beyond, so they try to make this concept more general, and as a consequence there are many applications which try to leverage the Bitcoin technology and other cryptocurrencies, of course, to implement similar applications, more advanced applications, which do not need each party involved to trust each other. So for example, during the last 2 years, we built several proof of concepts based on this technology. One was just a peer-to-peer insurance where you could buy a flight delay policy with no need to have any intermediary, pretty much. So the idea is that you can have the blockchain to monitor the state of a flight, for example, and you can pay out according to the state of the flight delay in an automated way with no need to have any central server, any central authority or anybody, and you can automate the whole process thanks to the blockchain and those smart contracts.
So you put the conditions into the program.
Yep.
If the flight is 2 hours late or 1 hour late, and you have the policy, you automatically, without putting in a claims form or anything, the payment is just made.
Yeah, correct. So of course the funds need to come from somewhere, right?
Yeah.
So there needs to be a commitment from somebody, and this is what already peer-to-peer insurance enable in some ways. But the blockchain, with the blockchain, you can get rid of any intermediary, and the system is just kept up by the blockchain itself. So it's managed in a distributed fashion or in a decentralized way in most of the times.
Okay. Eddie, what are the main, how much money is going into this space, and what are the main things you're seeing investments in?
So until now about 1.5 billion has been invested mostly over last year, and initially it was the internet pioneers, the Mark Andreessen and the entrepreneurs like Richard Branson, the ones that were early before in the other technology waves. And they realized that blockchain can be a foundational technology and can disrupt many industries, so that's why they came in. And then institutions came in. So for example, NASDAQ, New York Stock Exchange, banks like Santander, they have been investing in this space. So overall about 1.5 billion. And we started investing back in 2013, but in 2014 we realized platforms were very important. So platforms where you can build these smart contracts, platforms where you can build these applications, which can be used by these large institutions. So in terms of investing, the main thing is that there are being different ways to invest. So for example, a lot of traditional VCs have invested and large institutions. One of the reasons is because there is a talent shortage in the space. There are not many engineers that are available to program and to develop these solutions. So when these big institutions were being pitched by startups, sometimes they invest, sometimes they just acquire them. They realize they want to do, you don't easily get liquidity, you don't easily get an exit. But because of blockchain, then you can start trading tokens which represent shares of these companies. So the whole token issuance and the whole token ecosystem that has been built around this is very interesting for investors, and it's a new way to have liquidity, and it's a new way for a lot of startups and new companies in that space to raise funds as well.
So, sort of wrapping up at that point.
Work and usually creates the network to compromise it. So there is it's quite technical, so we can discuss it afterwards.
Question. Okay, so the question is, what is Ethereum, and is that an investment possibility? Eddie, do you want to?
I think you can do this Ethereum and then explain briefly around the. Yes.
So Ethereum was, as I was saying, blockchain was initially open source. Basically, Ethereum took most of the concepts, but they developed their own blockchain for smart contracts, which is something Thomas does as well. And actually, his company, I think, is involved with 1.5% of all the transactions on Ethereum. So Ethereum, initially, the way they raised funds was through kind of crowdfunding, which is called crowd sale. They sold their own token, which is the fuel to make the platform work, or Ether. And they raised, I think, at the time, $18 million. And we didn't invest at the time because it was it was not traditional mainstream kind of investment like equity. They were investing in a foundation, non-profit foundation, so it was not really investable at the time. Now there are ways to invest because they have their own applications, or there are startups building on Ethereum. And we have invested in a company that Thomas can explain more technically what they do. And basically it's called Rostock or RSK Labs, it's a company. And they do the same thing as Ethereum, smart contracts, but using the Bitcoin blockchain, the original blockchain.
So basically, Ethereum defines the way smart contracts can be written. So it defines what is a smart contract in practice. And Rootstock, in which we invested, is a company in Argentina which is trying to bring the same concept on the top of Bitcoin as an upper layer solution. What it means is that you can leverage the strength of the Bitcoin network, which as we speak is the biggest out there, and you can build smart contracts on the top of it thanks to Rootstock. So it's a different layer. Ethereum sits on the side, so it's a different solution. It's completely independent from Bitcoin and from Rootstock, and can run pretty much the same application.
When we say Bitcoin is the bigger out there, it's bigger than Google, it's bigger than all the supercomputers of the world, thousands of them. It's bigger than any network right now. Just so you understand the
So we've got to wrap up now. Can I just say, maybe you'll ask the question afterwards. Thank you very much for listening to our talk. Our company is Coincilium. We're traded on the NEX exchange. Our ticker symbol is COIN, C-O-I-N. Our market cap is currently about 1.8 million and the share price is 2 pence, and we have 92 million shares outstanding. We're not allowed to give projections, obviously, as directors of the company, but I recently put a significant amount of my money in the last raise, for 25,000 myself. We raised just under 200,000. We're very excited about the future. If you would like to come and hear more about us and more about the space, 20th of April is the day. I'll stand by the door on the way out, just ask me for a flyer and I'll hand it to you. Thanks very much and enjoy the rest of your day.